Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Reverend Catherine Cullen, the minister here at First Parish Church. And on behalf of the Duxbury Interfaith Council, we welcome you to this South Shore Vigil for Peace, our response to the tragedy in Boston yesterday. And I would like to thank all the members of the Interfaith Council, our elected officials who are with us here today, members of the fire department and the police department, and Carson Lloyd, who's providing our music, and you all for coming here tonight to be in solidarity with the folks who endured such tragedy yesterday. So come a little closer, get warm together, make a circle of some sort, and I invite you to be with me in prayer. O Holy One, we are on our knees in awe and supplication, for we have remembered the incomprehensible value of every human life. We have heard the thrum of helicopter blades and the wailing of sirens. We have smelled the ash and the smoke. We have seen the blood-spattered sidewalks and the ravaged bodies of your children. We cannot unsee. Help us, dear God, bathe our ears, soothe our senses, flush our eyes. Wrap your mother's arms around us, for we need to be reminded of you, to remember what is holy and what is good. So we ask for the strength to remember that we are the helpers, we are the hope, we are the face behind the bomb suit, we are kindness to strangers, we are hearts glued to the television, we are on our knees cleaning blood off hospital floors, we are the impulse to run toward chaos, we are the helpers. We are the hope, and inside our breaking hearts is all the evidence we need that an unshakable conspiracy of goodness still thrives within the rubble and the ash. Amen.
I'm Father Bob Dean from Holy Family Church here in Duxbury, and I share with you from Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? The Lord is my life's refuge. Of whom should I be afraid? When evildoers come at me to devour my flesh, my foes and my enemies themselves stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war be waged upon me, even then will I trust. Show me, O Lord, your way, and lead me on a level path because of my adversaries. Give me not up to the wishes of my foes, for false witnesses have risen up against me, and such as breathe out violence. I believe that I shall see the bounty of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord with courage. Be stout-hearted, and wait for the Lord. Dear God, we trust that you are with us and all affected by the bombings at yesterday's Boston Marathon. Bless us with your consolation and peace. In a special way, bless the victims of this tragedy. Grant lasting peace to those who lost their lives. Give their families, relatives, and friends comfort in their sorrow. Bring healing to those who are injured and broken, and give your gracious help to those caring for them. Provide wisdom and strength to those working tirelessly to solve this terrible crime and to bring those responsible to justice. Help us to remember that people are basically good, made in your image and likeness. All we need do is to remember the countless numbers of responders, officials, and volunteers who reached out to care for the victims, many putting themselves at risk, and others who flocked to give blood and provide whatever help that was needed. Still, we need your power to be lights in the dark corners of our world. May yesterday's tragedy renew our commitment to be respectful for each and every person we meet, to confront anger with level-headedness, and when wronged, to respond with a willingness to forgive and not retaliate. Only in your love and power may we overcome evil and prevent it from growing and destroying the peace and harmony you have willed for our world. Be our refuge and strength this day. Lift us up, Lord God. Grant us comfort in our sadness, certainty in our doubt, and courage to live through this hour. Make our faith strong and bind us together as one large community of goodness and hope. May a spirit of love and caring descend upon us, giving us strength and confidence to meet the days to come. Graciously hear and answer these prayers, for you are our God now and forever. Amen. Now I invite you to spend just a moment of silence, particularly for those victims of yesterday's tragedy.
Good evening. Tonight we share our sorrow and our strength. While our medical professionals tend to the wounded, our law enforcement experts work to bring the perpetrators to justice, and our faith leaders comfort those who have lost loved ones. We are left to stand by and confront difficult questions. How could this ever have happened in our city? Who could possibly commit such a reprehensible act? How can we prevent this from ever happening again? What can we do to help? Today, I drove up to the State House. I considered those same questions. Like many of you, I felt sadness, anger, heartache. I thought about my own young son, whose 2 front teeth are missing, just like young Martin Richard. When I arrived at the State House, 2 images stood out in my mind. One was the State Police armored Hummer parked on Bowden Street. The other was a more hopeful sign: the abundance of blue and yellow Boston Marathon jackets worn by residents all around downtown Boston. We held a brief session in the House chamber this morning and then adjourned in memory of the victims, young Martin, 29-year-old Crystal Campbell, and others whose lives have been touched by this bombing. Only 2 official pieces of business were conducted today. One was what we call a sick leave bank for an employee who, it turns out, was the parent of a spectator who'd been injured in yesterday's bombing. It was a reminder that while we may be open for business today, it certainly is not business as usual. I want to thank the Duxbury Interfaith Council for hosting this evening and giving us a chance to come together. I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims, their families. We honor those lost, pray for the injured, and remember the bravery of all those who helped in need after yesterday's attack. Thank you especially to the volunteers and first responders for their courage, and to the medical professionals at local hospitals who are taking great care of those who are injured. In closing, I was touched by some words I read today from our Lieutenant Governor. I'd like to read them. The sun rose over Boston Harbor today at 6:01. It illuminated a city that grieves but does not crumble, a commonwealth that is at once stunned and committed to action. It cast a warm light on people from every corner of the globe who came to Massachusetts this week to be part of a glorious tradition and instead found themselves bound up in a moment of terror. And so tonight, we share our grief and our resolve. God bless. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. I'm Rep. Tom Coulter, and Reverend, thank you for opening your church to us this evening in this time of reflection and sorrow. You know, it was only a few months ago that Newtown happened, and folks are just sorting out how they feel about that. And as I met with people today, it was striking to me the range of emotions that people are feeling. There's fear, there's confusion, particularly among our children. There's anger. There's concern for the future of our country. Everyone is in a very different place, or perhaps everyone is in all of those places. Last night, or this morning at 4:30, my son came through the door. He's a Boston EMS medic and just finished a 12-hour shift, starting at the finish line and ending late into the evening. And typically when he comes home, if he's had a rough evening on the streets, I can hear him come up the stairs, his boots pounding. And that's a signal to me that it's time to get up. He needs to talk and I need to listen. He came up like a gentle child last evening. Didn't make a peep. So I was really confused and somewhat concerned, so I got up and we sat down at the kitchen table and I asked him about the day's events. And you'd be shocked that although he was shaken, I have never heard him more prideful. What he witnessed at the finish line were acts of kindness, compassion, courage, generosity of spirit. It reinvigorated him as a young man after having seen so many horrible things on the streets of Boston for so many years, that there was real hope for our people and for our future. Right before he went to bed, he said, "You know, Dad, the only thing I'm left with is fear." And I think that's what folks are feeling a lot about right now, is the fear that comes from confusion and uncertainty. And I think that's what we have to focus on, my friends. Hope and faith and prayer. You see, that person or people that did that yesterday are hiding somewhere under their rock. And they're very upset that we as Americans didn't run away from the flame, didn't run away from the fire. We ran towards it. We helped one another. We took care of one another. That bothers that individual. It inspires the rest of us. So I would just like to say to each and every one of you, particularly those of you that have children or grandchildren, perhaps it's fitting that we not wait until there's a tragedy to embrace them like there's no tomorrow. Because there is no promise of tomorrow or any tomorrow. And so I think perhaps it's fitting that we take a step back and we use these tragedies so that those who fell and those who are injured have not fallen or been injured in vain. They teach us to be strong. They teach us to be better moms and better dads. They teach us to be better children. They teach us to be vigilant. And I would ask each and every one of you to take away that lesson from this horrible tragedy. And perhaps it makes us better parents, better neighbors, better friends to one another. God bless, and let us not ever forget those who passed and those who are still recovering. And I would ask everyone to go home this evening and give your children an extra hug. God bless.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cantwell. I'm a state representative from Marshfield and Situate, but equally as important, I go to church here. And Reverend Cullen, thank you so much for organizing this event tonight, and for all the clergy and all the other officials who are taking part tonight. This is such an important way for all of us to come together, because we all are looking for ways to make sense of what happened yesterday and what is it that each and every one of us can do to go forward. And most of my comments I direct for the little ones, the children who are here tonight. Because like everyone, I'm horrified and frankly angry at the events of yesterday's Boston Marathon. Each of us knows someone who either ran the marathon or who participated in Boston yesterday, all to celebrate a slice of Americana that we love. We can come together and just enjoy a wonderful day outside with family and friends. Times like this, it's important to know that civilized people, not just in Duxbury or the South Shore, but throughout the entire world, share in our shock, in our pain, in our anger. Catherine, just today, I got an email from a young student who we hosted 3 years ago, who's a Spanish exchange student. And he put on his Facebook a picture of him holding a Spanish flag and a friend holding an American flag side by side. And just with a very simple note saying that they were wishing us well and hoping we all were safe. We should know the support of people throughout the United States and throughout the world is a reminder that no civilized people condone such violence as what we saw yesterday. Though these acts of terrorism, they will be a challenge to our way of life, it's a challenge that we in the United States and people throughout the world have met and overcome. Indeed, tonight, we affirm that we together will overcome this hatred and this terrorism that we have seen. As we reflect upon those terrorist actions, we should all take pause to consider what measured reaction we can all have and not jump to any irrational conclusions about who may be responsible. We'll have valid concerns and we may change our way of life a bit, but the terrorists win when they get into our psyche and when we change the way, if we want to celebrate a piece of Americana, if we want to celebrate coming together, we need to do so. But in closing, I want to talk about what can we concretely do, each and every one of us. Tonight's an important start, just to share one another's company and talk this through for how we'll make sense of this. But other things, what can we do? Certainly keep those who have suffered in our hearts and prayers. Certainly Martin Richard, the 8-year-old boy whose mother and sister still cling to life right now. Say a prayer for them. For Crystal Campbell, 29-year-old student who lost her life, another BU student who officials will announce tonight who lost his life. Each of those folks we want to keep in our prayers. Second, as I mentioned before, refuse to allow fear to become part of your life. We all will continue to go on. Certainly there'll be things that will be done for future events, and they're already talking the 4th of July, they're talking other ways to keep us safe, but we all need to live life and live life to its fullest. A third that I know it has been mentioned from others on TV, and that is give blood. All of the different hospitals are saying they are doing well at the very moment, but that's something that they want people to schedule things out for the next few weeks. But the final point, which is where I wanted to point to the children, is to always remember, above all, that goodness will prevail. My buddy Josh Cutler just quoted from the Lieutenant Governor. I want to quote in one moment here from Mr. Rogers. Because Mr. Rogers had very hopeful comments that he would say when he was a boy and he would see scary things on television, his mother would turn to him and say, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. And that's the thing we should remember from tonight. Above all, good has already prevailed. Tom Calder mentioned, look at the folks who rushed into harm's way when the bomb went off and when there was smoke. They ran to the problem, not away. There were first responders who were there, police and fire, and thank you to the police who are here tonight helping to host. But also there are many civilians there. There's a gentleman, Carlos Arredondo. He and his wife, they've come to the State House. Tom Calder and Josh and I have met him. He lost a son in Afghanistan. He was there as a spectator giving out flags. When the bomb went off, he rushed into, you'll see video of him pulling away at some of the scaffolding to help people. He was a person who was pushing someone across the finish line in a wheelchair, making sure that person would survive. There's a former New England Patriot, Joe Andruzzi, who was there to support his cancer foundation. Think of all the people helping yesterday to raise money for many charities. They stayed there and he was helping someone who was afflicted. An Army veteran, Bruce Mendelson, who was also there, knocked off his chair when the bomb went off, and he rushed out to help people. That's what we need to remember, because we defeat this senselessness when we find peace in the actions of so many good people who made a difference yesterday. The final thought that I did have was we saw elite runners finish yesterday in the marathon, and then for these many heroic people who made sure that others would cross the finish line because of their selflessness and their humanity. It's those spirits that we remember tonight, and I thank you all for coming tonight to share in this moment. Thank you.
There is very little that I can add that hasn't already been said. It's a time of great sadness, but I believe it's also a time of resolve. We're not going to live in fear because of those cowards who think so little of human life. We will persevere, and as Americans, we will never back down.
Good evening. I'm the Reverend Daniel King. I'm the minister of the First Parish in Kingston and also president of the Plymouth Area Interfaith Clergy. When Catherine called me this morning to invite me here, I didn't know the chill factor would go down 20 degrees since 9 o'clock this morning, but we're here and we're doing a good thing. I was reminded of the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who warned in his sermon delivered in Montgomery, Alabama in 1957, "Men must see that force begets force, hate begets hate, toughness begets toughness. It's all a descending spiral, ultimately ending in destruction for all and everybody." We were reminded yesterday of the death and destruction that we have seen from a distance in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Egypt, where those who have unrequited evil in their hearts or unrequited pain express it. We know that the world is not as innocent as Eden was said to be, purely good and safe, but nor is it an evil place. There is evil, which who really knows why? Some people come to embody and inflict upon the innocent. But there is also good, which I truly believe is embodied by the vast majority of humanity. For every evil bomber, one who would make a statement without regard to human life, there are millions of people who will crawl into the smoking ruins toward the voice of a crying child, who will sit and cry for the suffering of people that they never knew, who will, in the face of such evil as we saw yesterday, remind us over and over again of what is good. Let us never lose track that there is good in the world, and it is our responsibility to bring it to light, no matter what.
Good evening. I'm Reverend David Troxler, co-pastor at St. Paul's Church of the Nazarene here in Duxbury. One of my favorite authors is the late C.S. Lewis, and in his book, The Problem of Pain, said this: "If the first and lowest operation of pain shatters the illusion that all is well, the second shatters the illusion that what we have, whether good or bad in itself, is our own and enough for us. Everyone has noticed how hard it is to turn our thoughts to God when everything is going well with us. 'We have all we want' is a terrible saying when all does not include God. We find God in interruption. As St. Augustine says somewhere, God wants us to give something but cannot because our hands are full. There's nowhere for him to put it. Or as a friend of mine said, we regard God as an airman regards his parachute. It's there for emergencies, but he hopes he'll never have to use it. Now God, who has made us, knows what we are and that our happiness lies in him. Yet we will not seek him as long as he leaves us any other resort where we can even plausibly be looked for. While what we call our own life remains supreme, we will not surrender it to him. What then can we do but make our own life less agreeable to us and take away the plausible source of false happiness? Like those who dropped packages and the runners who were unable to retrieve their belongings at the finish line, we need to drop the things that hinder us and open our hands and our hearts to the love of God.
I'm Harry Katz, and I'm chair of the No Place for Hate Committee in Duxbury, part of the Interfaith Council. I first want to thank our fire chief, Kevin Nord, and our police chief, Matt Clancy, for their assistance in planning today's event. They were very, very helpful. We cannot actually picture goodness, for it is not a being, it is a force, like electricity. Nobody ever actually saw electricity. We know that it exists. We can see and feel what electricity does. If we have an electric heater and connect it, we get heat. If we have an electric motor and attach it to a vehicle, we get the vehicle to move. In other words, we get to know what electricity is by what it does. In the same way, we get to know what God is by what God makes us do. When people, I'm having difficulty seeing this because of the light, so I apologize. Maybe it's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Let there be light.
Okay, we were talking about electricity and getting it to start. In the same way, we get to know what God is by what God makes us do. When people are, so to speak, connected with God, they do good things. We call such people godly, and their acts are godly. Whenever this force is active, we say that God has exercised influence and power. Belief in God, therefore, has to do with human nature, with the way individual men and women act, with their attitudes, their ideas of what is good and what is bad, with their ideals. Belief in God has to do with our attitude towards life itself. Do we find life good? Is life worthwhile? If we believe that life is worthwhile, that it is good, that in spite of sickness and accidents, in spite of poverty and war, In spite of all the sad and difficult conditions in the world is a wonderful place to live. And it can be made still a better place than we believe in God. When we believe in God, we cannot be discouraged because we believe that all the misery in the world is due, not to the fact that misery must be there, that it is a necessary part of life, but to the fact that we have not yet discovered how to do away with that misery.
Well, we are coming to the end of our time together, and I asked, do you all have candles? Did everyone get a candle? There are baskets of candles, and I'd ask our candle lighters to start with the flames. And this might be a little bit of an exercise since we do have some wind, but let's see how well we can do with this. So do I have the folks who have the lighters? Can they go around and light some of the candles, and we'll pass the flame? And we're going to conclude by singing God Bless America. So let's get our candles lit, and we'll all join together in singing God Bless America. And as you're getting your candles together and getting them lit, I'm going to invite anyone who ran in the marathon yesterday. Kristen, would you just come forward? Just come forward with your... Anyone else here who ran in the marathon yesterday? Anyone else who ran the marathon yesterday? Come forward. Right here. Right here. We honor you. And Kristen told me she's going to run again next year. This is not going to stop her. So let's give these folks a round of applause and say, we are with you next year on the course. And let's get our candles lit for our final song, God Bless America. Are those candles able to be lit at all? No, they're not. So just take your candle home and light it at home. And who'd like to start us off? Who has a voice? I do many things, but I don't have a good voice to start off. God bless America. Land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean. White with snow, God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home. Thank you, everyone. God bless America. God bless us. And we will be on that course next year with you folks. Good night.